I mean, we are competing. We are competing right now with like the trial of our former president and also our eternal president. Um,
I
the
wanna I wanna
eyeballs.
just take a brief aside here and talk
Yeah,
about the fact that
current events.
I was sitting in the engineering lab at work
Hmm.
Mhm.
with my earbuds in, listening to the guy, the president's the former president's lawyer talking
Hmm. Yeah.
while I was working.
Is he the
Yep.
former president's former lawyer yet, or is that the
No,
previous
Soon.
one?
no, and that motherfucker has the audacity to stand in front of the U.S. Senate and go,
On
"The
television.
slippery slope principle will apply," and I almost fell off my fucking stool. Like normally in a debate, you have to point out that the other side is doing a slippery slope
Yeah.
and call them on it. This guy
For
went,
those of you in the audience who are not familiar with argumentative rhetoric, it's normally slippery slope fallacy, which is
yes, yes,
when you mistakenly argue that one thing will always lead to another.
the slippery slope fallacy is when you say A is bad because A might lead to B, and B is bad because B might lead to C, and C is bad. Unless you actually prove
Prove
that those things.
actual causation between
Yeah.
those.
So
Not that
he
hard.
does it. He's like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my argument is based on a fallacy. Like, dude, maybe you should give slippery slope a Google and just see what comes up.
But before you use it in a fucking
In front of the
impeachment
Senate.
hearing,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not a bad place to use it because like half the senators are like 100 years old and then they don't remember like
oh,
10 minutes
oh,
ago.
he just said a big word. He probably knows what he's talking about.
Which one's big? Slippery slope or principle?
Principle. That's the biggest word in there.
Anyway,
Um,
back to our original topic. So
Look.
no VTuber lore.
One more tangent back.
So okay, so my
Good.
theory, right? So okay, so the abridged summary of the Hato Chama arc, right? As originally she was Akai Hato,
Hmm.
and then
The tsundere.
yeah, she was not a tsundere. She was a tsundere. She just didn't like
The
you.
fuck does that mean?
It's a girl that doesn't like you.
It's the tsundere without the dere half.
Isn't
Think
that
like
just girls?
think like
Yes.
think like Asuka from Ava. She just genuinely didn't like Shinji.
Yeah, well, that make that for good reason.
All right. Well, then she started doing this other personality on stream. And she changed her intro and started introducing herself as Hachima.
As she steadily grew more
As she
and
started
more
getting
insane.
weirder, and then Akai Hato came back. Right. So here's what happened.
That's the Australian, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, they're just like that. There's no deeper meaning.
So okay. So no. Here's what happened. So
They're all inbred and they're all like
Hachima
that.
is her evil twin, and
Fucking
locked
soap
up
opera shit.
Akai Hato in the cage, right? And then Hato started escaping. She started sneaking out to do midnight Minecraft streams. And then Hachima found out, had Akai Hato beheaded on stream. This was an actual thing that happened.
I love YouTube terms of service.
And then somehow, Akai Hato was resurrected,
Mm-hmm.
cut off Hachima's head, put
Uh-huh.
her severed head onto Hachima's body,
Mm-hmm.
Pulling a fucking JoJo's part
thus
one.
defeating Hachima. But in doing so, she became
At
the
what
very
cost?
monster that she was trying to destroy, and is still Hachima. That's my theory.
So
This
what
is
happens
level of
next is
up to
Hatochama
Yeah.
is going to have a child with Hachima's body.
Yes.
Who will later eventually go on to have a dream, and then Hatochima will get killed by her grandsons.
Is this the plot of Kingdom Hearts?
No, this is part of JoJo's.
Yeah, this could be an elaborate JoJo's reference, which would be disappointing. Or it could be the fact that just Australians are just sort of like that, and this is what happens when we give them access to the internet. Like, we sent them there for a reason. Why are we letting them back into society? That's my argument.
I have no rebuttal, but I do have this popcorn.
Yeah. Also, this is
And
some
we have a
wild
book.
ass. Yeah.
That's right. What's up, Bookers? It's your boy, Poldy-chan here. Back at it again for another episode of Book Club. Today, I've turned the Vox on my microphone all the way down, so you get to hear all of my mouth sounds. We're going to see if that boosts engagement.
Mm-hmm.
We are continuing on with chapter 16.
Yeah.
16.
16.
In chapter 16, Leopold Bloom and drunk Stephen stagger
Yes.
through the streets of Dublin to this coffee shop where they find all the other weird drunk creatures of the night.
Including a sailor who's just making shit up.
Yep. So,
Yes. And when we left off last week, a streetwalker had arrived.
yeah. So, this is funny because Bloom literally just came from the whorehouse, right? Like, he was at the whorehouse, and he has now left. But this prostitute walks in, and Bloom gets all flustered and suddenly becomes very interested in, like, his pink napkin. Mr. Bloom, scarcely knowing which way to look, turned away on the moment, flusterfied but outwardly calm. And picking up from the table the pink sheet of the Abbey Street organ, which the Jarvey, if such he was, had laid aside, he picked it up and looked at the pink of the paper. Though why pink? His reason for so doing was... Okay, I read this sentence like 5 times and I couldn't make heads or tails of it, so someone help me out here. His reason for so doing was...
Yes.
He recognized, on the moment, round the door, the same face he had caught a fleeting glimpse of that afternoon on Ormond Quay. The partially idiotic female, namely of the lane, who knew the lady in the brown costume does be with you, Mrs. B, and begged the chance of his washing.
These are words, for the most part. Individually, they make sense. In close proximity, I can understand some meaning. Together, all is lost.
The annotations didn't seem to help with this one. Let me...
Oh, makes sense to me.
Okay,
Please
what's
explain.
it mean?
No. Right.
No.
So his reason for doing so, he has recognized the same face. Remember when he was earlier on the beach and there were several people there, one of whom got real hot and bothered looking at him. The lame girl with the bad leg. This is not her.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is not Sissy
No.
Caffrey.
This is not. This is the other one.
What do you? None of
There's
them
another
were.
one.
None of them were prostitutes.
Well, I think is what it's not. She isn't literally them. She looks like them, and he is like, oh no. And he's like, this person looks kind of like those young girls, and because I'm Leopold Bloom, I'm confused and befuddled by this, and so I've become flustered, and I'm gonna do the literal equivalent of doing the touching 2 fingers together, and stare at this pink piece of paper and go, yes, this pink paper is made of pink.
Okay, so here's what it sounds like to me. So
Okay.
he sees the prostitute walking in and recognizes her as a woman that he saw earlier that day who had asked to do his washing, which is probably a euphemism, being that she is a prostitute.
Mhm.
But then he talks about literally washing laundry.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I
Because
read
he's
the
Leopold
book,
Bloom.
Yeah.
and I don't remember him being solicited by a prostitute earlier on.
No. The prostitute looks like someone else you saw earlier. And for some reason, Bloom is getting all weird. And there's also some wordplay going on here. Where it's boring, old-timey wordplay, so you don't need to get into it.
Yeah, because the annotations don't tell me what it is, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, why washing? Which seemed rather vague than not. You're washing.
Mm-hmm.
Still, candor compelled him to admit he had washed his wife's undergarments when soiled in Hall Street. And women would, and did too, a man's similar garments initialed with Bewley and Draper's marking ink. If they really loved him, that is to say, love me, love my dirty shirt.
Yeah.
It must be a
Right.
metaphor.
No, I think they're just talking about the laundry.
Why would he be embarrassed by seeing someone that he saw doing laundry?
He's Bloom. He's a very odd fellow, despite being a very normal fellow.
But he was just at the whorehouse.
Yeah. That's I think that is what is known as a joke.
I don't get it.
Yeah, well, it's not very funny. Which also might be, in fact, part 2 of the joke. It's funny because it's not
It's
funny.
multi-layered.
Yeah.
Incredible.
The-
Joyce is on an entirely different level of humor.
Yeah,
He is pre-post irony.
exactly. I mean, honestly, that we're at the point in modernism where, like, this novel's written in 1918. It's published in 1918. Goes into wide circulation of the 20s and 30s. We're getting to the point where we're starting to anticipate postmodernism, which this novel is not. It's plain old modernism. But you can sort of begin to see the sort of playing with time and space and form that you would see in more postmodern works.
It does feel postmodern. Like
Especially chapter 15.
he skipped all of modernism, straight to postmodernism, and everyone else was like, "All right, dial it back a little bit, Joyce.
Yeah,
The
especially
world's not
chapter
ready for
15.
this one yet."
Like honestly, there are echoes of this work in stuff like in like Gravity's Rainbow or Infinite Jest. That style of over the top. You just keep writing so much, and it's like it's up to the audience to figure out what's important and what's not.
I do want to read Infinite Jest next.
Yeah.
I want that to be the next actual book club book.
That thing's like even longer.
Well,
Let's
maybe
take
I'll.
something lighter first.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so next is Industrial Society and its
Yes.
future.
Next is Industrial Society and its future.
Hmm.
The abridged version.
Lame.
I'm not
I mean,
gonna.
like,
It's like 1,000 pages.
Okay, also like half of it is just the unhinged ramblings of a madman.
Yeah.
Once you get past like 30 pages in, it becomes increasingly unhinged. Yeah, and he never really. Our boy Teddy K.
It's a
never pulls it back
manifesto
together.
written by a math professor who's eaten nothing but turnips for a decade. It's not good. Which is why we must read it.
Yeah. To induce psychic damage on our listenership by ping-ponging between very good books and very bad books.
We'll leave it up to you to figure out which is which. So
Yeah.
here's
Meanwhile,
here's
at the
what it
coffee
sounds.
shop.
Here's what it sounds like to me.
Uh-huh.
So Bloom went to do laundry,
Hmm.
and while he was at the laundromat, do they still call them laundromats?
I mean, did
Yes.
they then call them laundromats?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, does the name laundromat predate
What we
the
now know
mechanical
as
washing
laundromats?
machine?
I mean,
Anyway, so So he had gone.
No, the laundromat was in the olden times just a room full of Chinese immigrants who were not paid to do your laundry.
Right. So he had gone down to Halls Street to wash the laundry at the communal laundry washing house or whatever. I don't really know how it worked back then. While he was there,
All opium.
a woman actually asked to do the washing. Right? This seemed like a reasonable thing. Someone would be like, hey, you don't want to wash your clothes. You give me a shilling and I'll wash your clothes for you. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was so embarrassed by this that when he sees the woman again later, he can't even make eye contact, lest he be recognized as a person who washes laundry.
This is in levels of, like, spaghetti in pockets we not thought possible.
But it feels incredibly in character for Bloom, right?
Oh, yes.
The only thing that throws me off is this seems like it's a throwback to something that happened earlier in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no laundry washing scene. No woman offered
Hell
to do
yeah,
his
we're
laundry.
referring to events that happened entirely off camera. Yes. Art. Also possibly bad storytelling, or we're just not remembering an obscure detail in this very long book. All
Look,
of these
I
are
may
true
not have paid
simultaneously.
much attention to any of this book, and my memory is terrible, but I feel like I would at least remember forgetting this, you know?
Yes, but how would you remember if you've forgotten?
I forget. But there...
So, moving on.
Yeah. God, this
He
man would
gets
lose his own.
embarrassed about this.
This man would lose his own head if it wasn't attached.
Yeah.
Who, Alex or Blue?
Yes.
He's still got that soap in his pocket.
Oh yeah, he does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
All right. So Bloom.
Unless it's like slipped out when he didn't notice. Wonder if that'll come back.
It has come up a couple times where he like feels his pocket looking for like his coin purse and he's like, "Oh yeah, there's soap. I still got soap."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, he looks away from the prostitute and then like I guess to distract himself, he starts up a conversation with
Yeah. But,
Steven.
mm-hmm.
And this conversation is so funny because Bloom is rambling. He's doing his normal, like, pseudo-philosophical musings. And Steven is alternating between being, like, too shit-faced to, like, speak and just playing devil's advocate for no real reason. Other than
I've been
because
that level of drunk plenty of times.
other than because he's Steven, and that's what he does.
I
So,
love Reddit.
Bloom remarks to Steven,
About disease and people coming out of hospitals, and I assume because it's a prostitute, he's talking about
yeah,
venereal diseases.
he's talking about the prostitute.
Yeah, or
It beats me.
the one venereal disease they had back then, which was syphilis.
They had some other fun and exciting ones.
Yeah, but
They
they
just-
didn't have the full buffet like we do now.
Yeah.
Or they did, but nobody talked about it.
Syphilis was the big one.
It
Made your
beats
face
me,
fall off.
medically, I am speaking, how a wretched creature like that from the Lock Hospital, reeking with disease, can be barefaced enough to solicit, or how any man in his sober senses, if he values his health in the least. Unfortunate creature. Of course, I suppose some man is ultimately responsible for her condition. Still, no matter what the cause is from. And Steven fucking shrugs and goes, "In this country,
Hard.
people sell much more than she ever had, and do a roaring trade. Fear not them that sell the body, but have not power to buy the soul. She is a bad merchant. She buys dear and sells cheap."
Hashtag feminism question mark? Yeah. There's a lot to unpack here. Let's not.
Steven, what are you saying?
What is he saying?
He's not even he's not saying. He's just speaking.
No. Yeah.
But yeah,
he's vibing. Pure vibes.
I'm
right
imagining
now.
him just like slumped onto the counter, staring at his coffee but not drinking it,
Yeah.
and just mumbling this shit out.
Yeah. He's just stirring it with the little spoon, and he's just talking to his own reflection in the coffee as it sort of spins around.
Coffee normally give up over reflection.
If it's tar black in the right conditions, yeah.
How is dimly lit coffee house the right condition?
I mean, that's why I would film it. If I ever got a chance to work on Ulysses the motion picture.
So here's another thing that trips me up, right? So the elder man, though not by any manner of means an old maid or a prude. Are they talking about Bloom? Because they do this throughout the chapter where they refer to the two of them as like different different synonyms for younger and older. And it seems like this is where it's starting.
Yeah.
But Bloom is a fucking prude. He can't even look at a prostitute. So, but this definitely does seem like him talking.
For sure.
So it must be Bloom. The elder man said it was nothing short of a crying scandal that ought to put a stop to instanter. To say that women of that stamp, a necessary evil, were not licensed and medically inspected by the proper authorities, a thing he could truthfully state he, as a paterfamilias, someone Google that for me,
I am not at my computer at the moment.
was a stalwart advocate of from the very first start. So he's saying that all of the prostitutes should be licensed and inspected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which honestly, he's probably right.
Coochie inspection day.
Yeah, if they just had biannual coochie inspection day to make sure no one was spreading gonorrhea.
If it wasn't a crime and they could just go down to the women's health clinic and get a quick checkout,
Yes.
it would be a much better thing. This is hashtag feminism, I think. And then he kind of goes on talking about the body and the soul, or is and it kind of touching on I think the mind-body problem. I'm not sure if that had been articulated in philosophy
So
at that point.
this
So I think so.
It would have been.
They get it, Steven,
And
they get into some fucking like bullshit.
And then Steven does have to make a superhuman effort of memory to try and concentrate and remember.
Yeah.
Which is, I think he's just gonna break out the galaxy brain takes.
Yeah. Okay. So Bloom is like, you believe you as a good Catholic, which Steven's not a good Catholic. He's an atheist.
It's very hard to be a good Catholic even on a Wednesday.
Yeah, but he doesn't even pretend. Like, he's not Catholic. At least he doesn't. No,
Not
yeah,
practicing.
he's not a practicing Catholic. He's like a self-avowed atheist. But I guess Bloom doesn't know. So Bloom is like, you as a good Catholic believe in the soul. Or do you mean the intelligence, the brain power as such, as distinct from any outside object? The table, let us say. That cup. So he's like, hey, Steven, do you believe in the soul? I believe in that myself because it has been explained by competent men as the convolutions of the gray matter. Otherwise, we would never have such inventions as X-rays, for instance. So yeah, he's getting into the whole metaphysical existence of the soul
therefore,
thing.
I am.
Or is it just part of
Intelligence,
the brain?
the soul. Yeah.
And then Steven makes a superhuman effort of memory to try and concentrate and remember. Before he says,
brain blast.
entirely, entirely disingenuously. They tell me on the best authority it is a simple substance and therefore incorruptible. It would be immortal, I understand, but for the possibility of its annihilation by its first cause, who, from all I can hear, is quite capable of adding that to the number of his other practical jokes. Corruptio per se and corruptio per accidens both being excluded by court etiquette. So Stephen is like, the soul exists and is incorruptible and can only be destroyed by God.
Mm-hmm.
I guess because he just wants to egg Bloom on. Like, because that's just how he is. And Bloom,
Yes.
Bloom is like, the soul isn't simple. Of course, I grant you, to concede a point, you do knock across a simple soul once in a blue moon. Heh, fucking got him. But what I am anxious to arrive at is, it is one thing, for instance, to invent those rays Röntgen did, or the telescope, like Edison. Though I believe it was before his time. Galileo was the man, I mean. And the same applies to the laws, for example, of a far-reaching natural phenomenon, such as electricity. But it's a horse of quite another color to say you believe in the existence of a supernatural god. So Bloom is once again wrong here. Röntgen didn't invent the X-ray. He found the X-ray. They're out there. He didn't invent it any more than Newton invented gravity.
That's wrong. Don't believe him. People were flying around before 1619.
Fucking Newton put it into our fun.
Edison did not invent the telescope.
No, he did
it's
not.
also rather likely that Galileo didn't invent the telescope either. He was just the first person to get famous for it. It's one of those things where many people basically, as the technology to make polished glass lenses came around, lots of people were like, what can we do with these wacky things? Because everyone looked at them and held them up in front of their face and was like, whoa, these make things look different.
Yes.
And they were sticking them in different things. Galileo was like the first person to
use it for astronomy.
To widely publish results based on using it for astronomy. So he gets credit for it, which is close enough.
In between his daytime hobby of chucking bowling balls off the Tower of Pisa,
which you gotta understand.
What else do you do in the whatever fucking century it was?
Yeah,
fun.
You gotta understand that back then, if you were rich or like had a patron, you could just fuck around all day, and anyone who has ever been on top of a tall building and looked down was like, I would like to drop a thing off of this.
Yes.
So I don't blame him at all for his science.
Subscribe to the Patreon for exclusive bonus content.
If we hit our Patreon goal, I will go to the Tower of Pisa and drop 2 different sized metal spheres off.
Although Bloom is right in the fact that it's one thing to believe in natural laws of the universe, and another thing to go for, God exists.
Yeah. So Bloom, while Bloom says many wrong things here, his point stands. I would say that
conclusions deriving from false premises. This can happen.
Is that it's one thing to prove that X-rays exist or that electricity exists, but it's another thing to prove that God exists. And Stephen expostulates, which is a real word, I guess. He goes, oh, that has been proved conclusively by several of the best-known passages in Holy Writ. Holy Writ meaning the Bible. So Bloom's like, well, it's easy to prove that electricity is real, but it's hard to prove that God is real. And Bloom is like, Stephen's like, well, the Bible proves that God is real. Like, how can you just say that? You don't believe that for a fucking second.
I would like to know what the circumstantial evidence is. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, apart from circumstantial evidence. So there's anything that disproves the existence of God is purely circumstantial. Anyway, this is just so funny to me because Bloom is just trying to have a genuine discussion at 2 in the morning, right? And Stephen is fucked up, but still just saying dumb shit. to egg people on, because that's just how he is. And he just can't stop.
Yeah, he will never log off.
He will never log off.
Yeah. And they drop it, and then Bloom's like, "Hey man, are you gonna like actually drink your coffee and like eat the hardtack?" It's like, it's been a while. You doing okay?
That hardtack ain't getting any softer.
No.
It's like one of our skipper's bricks disguised.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Steven... Steven literally can't.
Yeah.
Couldn't.
He starts heaving.
He says couldn't, and then his mental organs refuse to dictate further.
Yeah, man. He's not doing so hot.
Yeah. Because, again, he's fucked up right now.
Yeah, he's so fucked up.
Fault finding being a proverbially bad hat, Mr. Bloom thought well to stir or try to the clotted sugar from the bottom and reflected with something approaching acrimony on the coffee palace and its temperance. Its temperance work. To be sure, it was a legitimate object, and beyond yea or nay did a world of good. Shelters such as the present ones they were in run on teetotal lines for vagrants at night. Concerts, dramatic evenings, and useful lectures, admittance free, by qualified men for the lower orders. On the other hand, he had a distinct and painful recollection they paid his wife, Madame Marion Tweedy, who had been prominently associated with it at one time, a very modest remuneration indeed for her piano playing. So he is thinking.
Yep.
This fucking man thinks the following thoughts. Those rehab shelters sure are good, but one time they paid my wife for playing the piano, and that defeats the point because I don't know. What? So they're good. They're good because they provide shelter for vagrants and free concerts and lectures to the lower class. On the other hand, they once paid my wife a very modest remuneration. Remuneration?
Yeah.
I thought it was remuneration. Remunerate. I've been reading that wrong my entire life.
No, remuneration is money.
Wait, no, remunerate's a real word. Remunerate is a word.
Yes, it is.
Remunerate means to re-enumerate.
Yeah.
Remunerate means to give money.
Money paid for work, yeah.
Yes, to give money.
And yeah, out of their profits, because there's no one else playing or giving free stuff out at 2 a.m. I do like the idea of like free speeches for like poor people given out by random guys. It's like that's just podcasting. That was just 4 times podcasting.
But so is Bloom's objection that they paid his wife a too modest of a remuneration, or that they paid his wife money for playing the piano?
Who's to say? It depends on how much you think Bloom hates his wife.
Yeah. Anyway, he then immediately changes topic to sulfate of copper poison.
Yeah.
SO4 or something in some dried peas.
Dried peas.
He remembered reading of in a cheap eating house somewhere, but he couldn't remember when it was or where. Anyhow, medical inspection of all eatables seemed to him more than ever necessary, which possibly accounted for the vogue of Dr. Tibble's Vicoco on account of the medical analysis involved.
And all of this bizarre train of thought is like in between the gap of him reaching over to stir Steven's coffee and him going, "Okay, try the coffee now."
Yeah, as he says this,
Steven
he's
drinks
stirring Steven's coffee for him.
Yeah.
Because Steven's just too
fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah, this man is lost in the sauce.
And Bloom continues to try and get him to eat
a food.
Please eat your bread. Eat the bread. And he's like, can't do it. And then
Knives.
Steven goes, please take that knife away. I can't look at it because it reminds me of Roman history. This sight of this knife is triggering my PTSD from that time when Caesar got stabbed. Which, Steven, that was a little before your time, right? Like, you weren't there when it happened.
He's transcending.
Steve is really fucking disassociating right now.
Yes. And Bloom does. It's literally... Mr. Bloom promptly did as suggested and removed the incriminated article, a blunt, horn-handled, ordinary knife with nothing particularly Roman or antique about it to the lay eye, observing that the point was the least conspicuous point about it.
So
It's a
this
dull
being
knife.
like, this being from Bloom's perspective right now, right? Like,
Yeah.
even Bloom is like,
Yeah, sure, whatever.
has the
you do.
wherewithal enough to be like, dude, fucking seriously.
It's
fine,
just a
Jesus.
normal-ass knife. Yeah. And then...
And then Bloom makes some comments on our sailor.
Yeah, he
Could
starts
spin those
thinking about the
yarns for hours on
sailor.
end, all night, and lie like old boots.
Yeah, he wonders how long he can talk. He wonders how much of it is true. And then he wonders if the guy's ever been to prison.
Yeah, man.
It required no violent stretch of imagination to associate such a weird-looking specimen with the Oakham and Treadmill fraternity. He might even have done for his man, supposing it was his own case, he told, as people often did about others, namely, that he killed him himself and had served his 4 or 5 good-looking years in durance vile, to say nothing of the Antonio personage. No relation to the dramatic personage of identical name who sprang from the pen of our national poet, who expiated his crimes in the melodramatic manner above described. So I guess the sailor is talking about a guy who knew who killed someone and went to prison, and Bloom's
He's like, I wonder if he's actually
wonder
that
if
guy.
he's that guy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's at least a vaguely interesting thought from Bloom.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
that's a thought.
It's 1 a.m. It's time for the 1 a.m. thoughts.
Yeah, this is as far as I read.
All right. So I guess
Brandon, take the wheel.
I'll go over. All right. So
He thinks about the wax Aztecs he saw,
Yeah.
who were
at the museum.
bow-legged, because the muscles here, you see,
Yeah.
were utterly
powerless.
powerless from sitting that way so long. Okay, so so he's saying that the Aztec kings sat on their thrones for so long that their legs got so cramped that they couldn't walk.
Meanwhile, in France, in King Louis XIV, it's just funny because that's a totally believable thing for royalty. Because King Louis XIV, invented stockings and high heels. He invented the stiletto to make his legs look better. And so he could do fancy plays at Versailles and do all sorts of weird king shit.
Fucking king shit. You dropped this, king.
Oh god. I think at Versailles they had they planted flowers that couldn't survive the night. So every morning they would plant new flowers so that the king could see fresh flowers every day.
Where did
even in
those
winter.
flowers come from? Where did they get fresh
Empire.
flowers?
Empire. They would send a man to the Netherlands to get the fresh flowers from the docks, and then
Every single fucking day.
But
yeah.
but if those
Yeah.
flowers survived, then why did his flowers survive?
They just wouldn't, and so they would have to create fresh flowers, and so they could have fresh cut flowers for the king every day, fresh from his garden.
Uh-huh.
And when I say his garden, we're not talking a garden from the back of his house. If his house was the size of half a county,
Oh yeah.
we're talking size huge.
We're talking aristocratic gardens because
We're talking-
basically with the changing economies at the time,
Mhm.
the aristocrats were basically like, all right, everyone off my fucking land, you are no longer worth it, and was like, well, now I have all this land, fuck it, gardens.
Yeah, to flex on people that I have so much money, I can have hundreds of thousands of acres and not grow food on it. Instead, I will put grass on it and play dainty tennis.
Also, where the concept of lawns came from, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And play badminton, in weird parlor games, which are the most tedious things on earth. But then we go back to our sailor who does a funny and calls him a Sinbad. Wonders if he seen the Flying Dutchman, or actually had gone to Italy and been near Coombe and seen all the garlic.
Coombe.
Yeah, and then we start talking about the temperaments of the various Mediterranean races.
Oh boy. This is
Comparing
gonna
the,
get
difference,
interesting.
comparing the difference between Spaniards and Italians.
Mm.
You know, Spaniards they're impetuous, and they do double speak, and
Yes,
because
the Spanish are impetuous, but the Italians, who we just witnessed getting into a fist fight with the ice cream man,
yeah, man.
are 100% impetuity free.
Yeah, well, they're poetic.
It's such a beautiful language. Putana Madonna. What
Yeah.
a wonderful phrase.
Yeah. And Bloom is of course wrong about his wife because she's born in Gibraltar, which adds,
Oh yeah, see, Steven even fucking calls him out on it.
which
Bloom,
Britain with guns likes to point out regularly is not Spanish and is in fact quite British. He stopped asking, no, you can't have it back.
yeah, Steven's like, the temperaments at the door were very passionate about 10 shillings.
Yeah.
Cause yeah, they were fucking fighting with the ice cream man.
Yeah, and then Steven goes back to the Italians and starts talking about Dante and Isosceles triangles.
Yeah.
Just
The
like
thing is,
What's
the thing is, like,
what's the deal with the isosceles triangle?
Isosceles triangles.
the fucking like association, like, oh, the Italians have come up in conversation. What do I know about the Italians?
Dante and the
Triangle.
isosceles triangle.
Yeah, man, and Leonardo da Vinci and Tommaso Mastino, which I'm getting confused with a different guy. Hold on. Yeah, no, totally. It's just an Italian name. Never mind. I was thinking of something else that's entirely unrelated to this.
Hang on. I'm gonna attempt to figure this out.
No, okay. About isosceles triangles.
Yeah, I
and
need to know why
Portinari
he's talking
and
about the
Leonardo.
fucking isosceles triangle. Because, like, triangles are associated with the Greeks, who are not Italians.
It's
Make
one of
it
their main
true.
distinguishing qualities.
Yes,
Yeah.
being that one is Italian and the other is Greek. That's how you can tell them apart.
I don't know. It depends on how far. I mean, in Dante's time, it wasn't Italy. It would have been what? Was he in Kingdom of Naples? Or the part of the city-state of Venice? Is that where Dante was?
Dante.
Or was he in Rome and part of near the Papal Estates?
Didn't he get exiled?
He was Tuscan.
Tuscan. Okay, we'll get there eventually. I'll start naming Italian cities, and we'll get there. I do like the idea of instead of like.
Oh wait,
ruddy-
hang on. No, that's his
of-
language.
Of Sicilian
Nationality
Dante.
Florentine. Okay.
Okay,
Florentine
Florence.
Yeah, but he got exiled from Florence because his fan
Posting.
fiction was heresy.
And then he simply wrote
More.
the text.
He wrote
based-
more of them.
Yeah, he wrote more. Where his cool friend Virgil leads him on a tour of hell,
Oh,
where
wait,
everyone
Florence is in Tuscany.
yeah, where where all of his haters were boiled in oil and stabbed with pointy sticks or whatever, and he got to dab on them and while writing his elaborate revenge fantasy.
Oh, it all
just
makes
figured-
sense now. Okay,
it's all
the
coming
annotations
together?
helpfully explain.
Mm-hmm.
Beatrice Portinari, a
Yep.
Florentine woman identified on Boccaccio's authority as the object of Dante Alighieri's abstracted and spiritual love. Beatrice was married to Simone de Bardi, hence the triangle. Presumably isosceles, because Dante's idealization of Beatrice's image put him so far from the real marriage relationship at the triangle's base. So they're saying that the love triangle is isosceles because it was a happily married couple, and then
some guy
just
watching.
Dante way off in the middle of nowhere.
Owned.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And Bloom is like, so it's because it's the sun and it's in the blood, the sun blood.
Yeah, Sunblood.
Yeah. Okay, all are washed in the blood of the sun. It feels like it should be written in the Dark Souls font.
Hang on, I gotta compose a treat real quick.
A treat for the boys. So, is there a Dark Souls font generator for that one? Because feels like something. Which one of the Dark Soulsy bosses is one of the more talkative ones? Who would say some wild shit like this?
There's not really a lot of dialogue during
I'm
the
aware.
boss fights. Nothing's coming to mind.
I've only played up to Asylum Demon and those guys on the cliff. But besides, we got Bloom is going to the museum. He's talking about hot wives, and the statues of these ancient Romans. I think they're talking about how great their proportions of their hips and their bosoms are. And I'm like, all right, Pygmalion, calm down. He's just appreciating the female form, but yet they're also handsome. And also how they don't wear clothes because it's hot, and so it makes them hot. And then, much like this one, the conversation just sort of stops, and then they just start talking about ships that sink.
Goo collisions.
Goo collisions. I think that's a tag on one of the bad websites.
Goo collisions.
With icebergs.
Goo collisions.
Goo collisions. Yeah. All that sort of thing. Ah, yes. Acted in sea, ships lost in fog, goo collisions with icebergs.
Goo collisions.
All of these things.
Hang on, I have to compose another tweet.
This Archer talking about, he's weathered monsoons. He describes what a monsoon is, and that he got a medal for it. Sure.
What is a goo collision?
I don't know. That's not a nautical term. You don't goo collide with something.
Where's Avery?
Don't.
What's a goo collision?
Yeah,
Well, there you have it,
Not at
folks.
it's not real.
I'm gonna Google it.
Okay, well, if I punch it into Bing, Bing's like, did you mean the Great Collision? And it's like a mysterious event that happened on Bakugan, because it brought up the Bakugan wiki.
Fucking Bakugan lore?
And then there's a bunch of collision repair centers. Google brings up.
I got a forum thread for the Super Mario Sunshine Dolphin emulator discussion about goo collision.
Is that like textures? Is it like soft mesh textures when they wiggle into each other, like for the ocean? Did James Joyce?
Yeah, no, they're talking about the collision with the goo isn't working correctly. with some on old versions of Dolphin. There's an emulator error in which you do not collide with goo.
Huh. Yeah, no, I'm still getting Bakugan shit, and also the Andromeda Milky Way, and the GE parts catalog. um,
Okay, so
Yeah.
safe to say that goo collisions not real.
I don't know. And now we're in Norway, which is Norway is the Saudi Arabia of the North.
Would you care to elaborate?
Well, they're both petrostates. The only
Okay.
difference is that one treats their underclass well, and the other takes away their passports and locks them in the basement.
And Norway owns a significant portion of GameStop.
Yes. Well, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund owns about 1 to 2% of stock of all companies.
Yes.
That's what they do. They own like 2% of the global stock market if you were to just sort of count it out. And while they do like pensions and putting funny hats on reindeer, they do the Saudi petrostate thing of building ridiculous infrastructure. Like they're gonna build like 17-mile long floating tunnels to connect like islands that have 15 people on them in the North Sea. Because when you have like $1 trillion wealth fund, you got to spend it on something. Right, and now we're talking about Henry Campbell and Albert Quill, who's writing distinct verses in the Irish Times. More, boat accidents and many ships were wrecked. Not enough talking about ghost ships, which is the only kind of boats I'm interested in. So we can just sort of skip and go onwards. Because the guy sitting next to him, the guy sitting next to the sailor has just fallen asleep. The sailor has actually put a man to sleep with his rambling sailor stories.
What page are you on right now?
I'm on 1039. Keep up.
Okay. I was on 1040, so you keep up.
No. Right. And then the sailor kind of stops talking, and then Bloom realizes, as the sailor's kind of like hit a pause and is like, hey, wait a minute, where am I? Bloom notices that when he stood up, he has 2 flasks of presumably ship's rum sticking out from one of each pocket for private
2
consumption
fucking flasks.
of his burning interior. Saw him produce a bottle and uncork it or unscrew it. Okay, Bloom, if you saw him uncork it or unscrew it, you know what he did. You don't gotta be all ambiguous with me. And then he takes a big swig. But then comes this wonderful sentence. The irrepressible Bloom, who had also had a shrewd suspicion that the old stager went out on a maneuver after the counter-attraction in the shape of a female, who had disappeared to all intents and purposes, could by straining just perceive him, when duly refreshed by his rum puncheon exploit, keeping up at the piers and girders of the loop line rather than out of his depth, as of course it was all radically altered since his last visit and great improved.
I have a question.
Yeah?
What did that sentence mean?
Good, right. So let's break out our diagrams. Okay, so what are the nouns? What are the verbs? What are the direct object pronouns?
I don't know.
Oh, you didn't spend your English classes diagramming sentences?
Not
in the
these
second grade?
sentences.
It's fine. You just gotta feel for it.
All right.
You gotta let the
Mr. Feel for it. Enlighten the
like-
rest of us plebs.
How are you feeling about this?
Right. So what Bloom is thinking, that there was another man there, not the old guy who fell asleep and not our sailor, but there was a third man, and that this third man had taken the prostitute to the other side of the coffee house and was doing things to her.
Right, as one does with a prostitute.
Yeah, and he could only, and in fact he could just see this guy after he'd taken his rum, and they're looking out. Yeah, and then in order to do this, somebody told him where the toilets are, and I think third man is taking the whore to go fuck in the public toilet.
Nice.
At 2 in the morning at 1 a.m. Which is, dude's fucking rock, honestly.
Nothing says winner quite like banging a whore in a public restroom.
Yeah, man.
The men's
but-
room specifically.
Mm.
It was all men's room back then.
That's true. That's true.
And then another these horse-drawn trams come up because a hoof is scooping away, and we go back to our sentry, who's just still kind of asleep. Let's see, is there anything? All right, and then Joyce describes our man in the box, who, now practically on the parish rights, who had been given the temporary job by Pat Tobin in all human probability from dictates of humanity, knowing him before shifted about and shuffled in his box before composing his limbs again into the arms of Morpheus. A truly amazing piece of hard lines in its most virulent form on a fellow most respectable, connected, and familiarized with decent home comforts all his life, who came in for a cool £100 a year at one time, which of course the double-barreled ass proceeded to make General Ducks and Drakes of.
What does ducks and drakes mean?
Well, I mean, if they're General Ducks and Drakes, they're not in the name. Those would be Admiral Ducks and Drakes.
Okay, so Ducks and Drakes is a game in which players compete to see how many times they can skip a coin over water.
Mm-hmm.
So he has literally thrown his money away.
Yes. By taking this job and by drinking all the damn time.
Yeah.
And this guy's, complaining about Irish shipping and jobs. He's doing the old-timey equivalent of complaining about NAFTA. I'm glad somebody appreciated that joke. We have to do high IQ gags to keep up with the high IQ of this book. And I mean, the annotations did inform me that at this time, Irish shipping was collapsing as an industry. As they were better boats, they could just go straight from America to England or straight from the rest of Empire to England without having to stop in Ireland.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, suffering a bit of the economic anxiety. And of course, and they're suspecting that the reason this is true is because the British government is greasing the palms of all the shippers. And it's not because London was the biggest city in the world at the time, and so needed a lot of things put into it.
Right.
Right. But then, after our sailor continues, Bloom notices him that he's put his plug back in his bottle. After his successful libation cum potation.
Sorry, say that again?
Libation cum potation.
Libation cum potation.
Yeah, cum potation.
Hang on, I have to compose another tweet.
Yeah, he sings a sailor song.
What does potation mean?
I mean, I know what libation means. I'm not sure what
Potation means drink.
Yeah. Libation usually, I've always heard in the context of, like, alcohol.
Yeah, libation is a drink. Libation is another word for drink.
After successful drinking with drinking.
Yeah.
Which is, he sings a funny, cool sea shanty, which I'm not going to sing. But there's the only interesting thing is that the beef is as salty
The
as Lot's
beef is
wife's
sold as
arse.
Lot's wife's arse. That's
It's
pretty funny.
hilarious. Which is a sick and cool reference to the burning of Sodom and Gomorrah, where the one thing God told Lot and his family to do was leave, don't look back. If you fucked that up, look back and became a pillar of salt.
Yeah, but I want to watch the cities get exploded. That's
Yeah.
cool as shit.
Well, according to the good book, it's because she thought about earthly possessions that were being destroyed instead of thinking about like the fact that her family was survived, that had been spared by the grace of God. and since God presumably turned her into salt because she was thinking about women doing the crime of women be shopping.
They do
Because
be
Old
shopping
Testament,
though.
they do be shopping. Because the Old Testament God was a bit of a prick. Presumably, in between Zechariah and Matthew, he went to therapy and calmed down a bit and decided instead of burning shit to the ground, I'll try to save these people from themselves. Okay, that joke just bombed. All right.
That was a joke?
Yeah.
Sorry, hold on. Run that by me again?
Last book of the Old Testament. I'm just make sure I get my facts right here. That's Malachi, not Zechariah. Damn it. And between the last book of the Old Testament and the first book of the New Testament, biblical scholars have estimated that a couple hundred years have passed. So clearly, in that time, God went to therapy and stopped punching holes in the wall whenever he got upset, and decided to say, let's try this whole Messiah thing and saving them from the darkness.
Got it. I get it.
Yeah.
Ha.
This is what I have to deal with, people.
Anyway, where were we?
The Skin the Goat's back with his axe to grind about the grievances and the natural resources of Ireland. That's better than England in every way. And he's blaming England for the fact they're not making as much coal in Ireland, even though the fact there was never a lot of coal in Ireland, and there's lots of coal in England because that's one of the three interesting facts about England, that it's fucking full of coal.
Cool. What are the other two?
Full of rain.
It's full of rain and full of pedophiles.
That's not cool.
It's a fun fact.
It's not cool.
It's a pretty cool fact because then you know not to go to England.
It's true.
Yeah. And he's talking about the situation of how England treats Ireland. They're siphoning away all their wealth and all of their resources, which is that's what empires do to their colonies. They're letting the rich drain all the resources while they're levying taxes on the poorest who do all the work. And it's like, isn't Ireland's great? Our bacon's the best, folks. We have the best meats.
Known for their bacon?
No, Ireland is not known for their bacon. But I think we've got, like when I think good bacon, like honestly, I mean, like thick cut bacon is sort of a British staple for a Sunday breakfast. But also like,
all right, so Irish bacon is made from
Irish
the
pigs,
back
presumably,
of the pig instead of the belly of the pig, and is
bacon.
more akin to Canadian bacon
than
ham. English or American bacon. So no, they're not known for their bacon because they don't even do bacon right.
Right, and the terrible thing about England is that they
this looks so bad.
And our style of bacon that we do stateside, streaky bacon.
Oh my god. Okay, hang on.
I can chat if you're just gonna fucking retch over it.
Or
drop it on stream.
I'm gonna throw this bitch up on stream. This is Irish bacon and cabbage.
Yeah.
And cabbage.
That looks like
in
uncooked.
cream sauce. Yeah, it looks like raw bacon
with cabbage and a cream sauce.
It's also like it's too pale to be bacon.
It's just boiled cabbage, cream, and bacon. That's awesome. That's some fucking dope ass cuisine, baby. Oh.
Don't like it. That's not gonna stay on the fridge. Don't like it. Yeah. Kind of. It's not a nice color. That's not the color that bacon is supposed to be. Anyway, yeah. So, all right, we've established that they're not known for their bacon.
Great recipe. As soon as it's just a way of cooking it, they boil it. The traditional Irish mode, they boil
Yeah.
it. Just throw it all in there and fucking boil it. Let's go. Oh, I love poverty. Terrifying. What is it with that part of the world and just the forbidden cuisine? And he's talking about, and he's getting louder now because he's getting mad about how the Irish are all dying in England's wars. Yeah, man. How they've, about how like he's also talking about the rise of the German and the Japanese empires and how they fought in the Boer Wars. And that Ireland is England's Achilles heel, as it is the soft underbelly of England, which that's not true. Everybody knows the soft underbelly of England is Wales. And
I looked up Brummagem.
yeah,
It means fake.
is that a slur against the English?
Well,
There aren't
yeah.
enough
So
slurs
it's
against the
okay.
English.
So Brummagem means shitty or fake. So
Nice.
called because of Brummagem. Brummagem is it's apparently pronounced. Brummagem is a city in England, or like a town in England.
The Brummy bastard.
Oh, it's okay. It's a nickname for Birmingham.
Yeah.
Which is funny because like it's all the different places in the UK have like derogatory names for other places.
Mm-hmm.
Like Scottish is used or was used to mean like poor and shitty.
Mm-hmm.
And now Brummagem is also poor and shitty. And it's just funny.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible how much they all hate themselves there. And
United.
yeah, the only thing that unites the United Kingdom of Great Britain, Scotland, and Northern Ireland is their mutual hatred for each other. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he ends this little speech about how every Ireland needs to stay in Ireland and buy Ireland and Ireland first. And then the sailor's like stone faces it all. He's like, that's hard to do. Forging an Irish nation takes a bit of doing, boss. And the other guy was like, yeah, no shit.
Palpably a bit peeved.
Yeah. And then to which cold douche referring to downfall and so on. The keeper concurred, but nevertheless held to his main views. And so he keeps going. He's like, the Irish are the best troops. We've got the best jumpers and the best racers and the best admirals and generals. And there's like how the Irish Catholic peasantry are the backbone of the empire. I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure it's India's grain that was the backbone of the empire. And that's how they won the war. All of them. They just starved India whenever they needed food. Weird. Yeah, the British people don't like to talk about the fact that Winston Churchill single-handedly caused a famine in India to feed England in World War II.
Yeah, well, there were rough times, okay?
Yeah. Jim Mullins?
Never met him.
Yeah.
I know Joe Miller.
Yeah, we all know Joe Miller. This whole podcast is an extended Joe Miller. Many are saying this.
The real Joe Miller. I can't fucking believe that the same shitty jokes that are on like fucking like birthday cards today were being written by Joe Miller in the 18th century.
Yeah. It is impossible to come up with a second joke.
Like,
We've spent years trying to find in the comedy mind a second joke.
there just aren't any.
Yeah.
Fucking wild.
And then Mr. Bloom, was sort of, kind of,
He was inclined to poo-poo.
poo-hoo the suggestion as egregious balderdash. For pending that consummation devoutly to be or not to be wished for, he was fully cognizant of the fact that their neighbors across the channel, unless they were much bigger fools than he took them for, rather concealed their strength than the opposite. Which, that's a pretty salient point. England is like, you can see England from Ireland on like the 2 days a year when the weather isn't shit. So like, it could smack it down if they really wanted to, which they did, until it got too difficult and they got bored of doing it. And he was like, in sort of, it's like, maybe I don't think we can just sort of wait them out, because they've got like, like I said earlier, what he says right now, 100 million years of coal, and so if we simply wait for all their industrial powerhouse to go away, then we can take them. Which is weirdly another incorrect fact, because they did not have 100 million years of coal, because Thatcher shut down all the coal mines.
Oops.
In the 80s and forcibly deindustrialized the North.
Whoops.
Which, whoops, just shattered the economy in the sake of privatization. And now England is doing a Brexit, and everyone with the sir or a ma'am or the third after the name is trying to execute every trans person in the streets.
Something like that, yeah.
It's small domino. Margaret Thatcher begins privatizing the mines. Big domino. Turf Island.
The turf thing is so weird, because it was literally just like the conservative media ran out of people to bully.
Yeah, they couldn't keep calling Jeremy Corbyn an anti-Semite because it just wasn't true. And they just sort of forgot it, and they couldn't do it anymore. And the fact that, like, after like the push for like bathroom bills and whatnot here failed, like the conservative evangelicals just sort of, okay, well, let's push this to England and see what happens, and it just took off
for some fucking reason.
Yeah, it's even more psychotic over there.
Like
Throwback to the British Prime Minister, or not Prime, British Member of Parliament,
Yes.
holding up a picture of Lily from Zombieland Saga with the caption "Shut the fuck up, turf," and her
With the
edited to be
Photoshop
holding a gun.
Yeah. It's like, this highly illegal death threat has been sent to me on Twitter.com. This is the abuse I fear I get from the transgender activists and their violent ideology. It's like,
Alex, I assume you've seen that picture.
I have
right?
not. I mean, I can imagine
Really?
it. I can imagine it in my head, because I've
so
I've
funny.
seen plenty of pictures of anime girls with the guns photoshopped onto them. I just
No.
haven't seen that particular one.
Here, hang on.
Send it
This
to me.
is
I'll throw
the
it up on
original-
stream.
I'll post it in book club. This is the original image, and then
I like the fact that like some
she prints
fucking
it out.
well,
She
some
fucking
intern,
prints it out.
some poor intern had to fucking print the shit out, and like this wasn't the only one. Like she's like printing out tweets and like death threat memes, being like, "This is what we have to face every day as conservatives, as death threats. We're the oppressed ones in this country." It's like,
No one is more oppressed than the conservative MPs.
white conservatives.
I just love the woman next to her just being like, "My God, why am I here?"
This is happening.
For some context, the character in the image,
Is trans.
Lily, yes, she is a undead trans girl.
Yeah.
Good for her. On the trans thing, not the dead thing. Although
Oh,
I
the
guess
dead
they all
thing
get
works-
on just fine being
It
dead,
actually works
right?
out
Yeah.
quite well for her because
Yeah,
A,
it's
she
an idol
continues
show,
being
right?
an idol,
Yeah.
and B, she no longer has to go through puberty. So,
Perfect.
There you go.
hello.
What's up, buckers?
You are so late.
He was busy. Right. So now, the countries might start moving apart. The armors of whores and chummies reminded him of Irish soldiers who had fought for England as against her and why are they doing this? And they sort of, he's kind of reaching back this very long-winded sentence about the sort of immortal soul of Ireland, to try and find a national spirit, uh, you know. And as for the lessee or the keeper, who probably wasn't the other person at all, he, B, which I assume is Bloom, couldn't help feeling, and most properly, it was better to give people like that the goby, unless you were a blithering idiot altogether and refused to have anything to do with them as a golden rule in private life in their felon setting. There always being an off chance of a dandy man coming forward and turning Queen's evidence or King's now, like Tennis or Peter Carey, an idea he utterly repudiated. So Bloom's like, yeah, okay, buddy. You keep mouthing off, planning an open insurrection against the government. I'm just going to go over here because there are spies everywhere in this country because of the despotic regime of England. And he just dislikes people who do, and he just likes people who commit crimes on principle. And then Bloom was like, well, but on the other hand, I do have an admiration for a man who actually brandished cold steel with the courage of political conviction. So he was like, I would never be a party to such a thing. So he's like on the one hand, he's not cool with political violence.
But on the other hand, you gotta respect the praxis.
Yeah. It's like, I wouldn't do it, and I don't think it's a good idea. But like, you gotta respect the game. Game respects game.
Yeah.
Drip respects drip.
Exactly.
I don't think Leopold Bloom has the drip.
I don't know. He wore all black to a funeral. That's pretty good drip.
Everyone wears all black to a funeral.
I didn't wear black to a funeral.
You're supposed to.
Nah.
Did you just not have enough drip?
I just didn't own any black suits, so I'm like, all right, well, wear the blue one. And he considers like the sort of person that does political violence, the sort of certain person who like kills their spouse in like a heat of passion.
That's praxis, baby.
And sort of directly
Well, wait,
plunging a knife into someone is like a post-nuptial thing.
Alternative post-nuptial Leo zone. Does that
Yeah, buddy.
mean she's cheating on you?
Mhm.
Or does that just mean you're looking for something new to do after sex?
Murder.
I'm gonna go with the latter because it's cooler that way.
Yeah, man. And sort of, and so he's like, and then he's like realized that the skin the goat guy he's been rambling about is probably not the guy who would actually do violence. He's like, the guys who like yell the loudest about doing violence aren't the guys who would actually do the violence, but he's like would just drive the car for the person who would actually do the crime.
Yeah.
And so wouldn't actually do it. He, and after this having thought, just sort of ignores him for a while. But he's, generous. And it kind of goes back to our sailor friend who's not like, this guy's just been pissing his money away in every tavern.
Yeah, he's also got 2 flasks of rum.
Yeah.
2.
How else do you get you through? Yeah.
You can't
Well,
argue
how
with
else
a
are you
guy who
supposed to
has
get
2
through?
flasks of rum.
How else are you supposed to get through your morning lectures? Like, wouldn't your meetings at work go so much better if you had 2 flasks of rum to use?
My meetings at work are great because I just sit in a Skype call and browse Reddit for an hour.
Uh-huh. And then, apparently in this tirade, Bloom remembers that, that he was insulted, and that he called me a Jew in a heated fashion offensively. So I, without deviating from plain facts, in the least told him his God, I mean Christ, was a Jew too. And all his family, like me, though in reality, that was one for him. A soft answer turns away wrath. And so, Bloom has managed to defeat this anti-Semite with facts and logic.
Ooh,
Destroyed.
fucking get him.
Get him.
Didn't the last time he say that he got a biscuit tin thrown at him?
Yes, he did. But this time, he didn't. But I assume it was a tone sort of deal. And then, a beautiful sentence. He turned a long, you are wrong gaze on Stephen. Timorous dark pride at the soft impeachment with a glance also of entreaty, for he seemed to glean in a kind of way that it wasn't all exactly.
Fuck, man, I'm gonna use that.
The you are wrong
Or
beam.
wrong
Gong. 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 I hope when they call Trump to the witness stand, he just does that for 3 hours. And, all our brains liquefy.
It begins instrumentality.
Yeah, and we all go back to the tang.
I wish.
Yeah. The thing is, to tie all this together, the fan art we made at the very start of this 150 years ago. For mine, I did do a funny riff on instrumentality, and I did just Photoshop Bloom drawing onto the T-posing fake Avas.
You did indeed do that. I remember.
From the end of Ava, because this book is the end of Evangelion of books. That it is telling its primary audience. At the end of Ava's case, it's weird nerds, and here it's a different type of weird nerd. Fuck off and die. And it's great.
It is great.
And so then Stevens starts mumbling about God, and then Mr. Bloom is like, you gotta look at both sides of the question here. It's hard to lay down any hard and fast rules as to right and wrong. The room for improvement all around there certainly is, though. Every country, they say, our own distrustful included, has the government it deserves. Theology. That you can, and this incredible sentence here: a revolution must come on the due installments plan. Yeah, you gotta do revolution in installments.
Simple monthly payments.
A simple monthly revolutions, which I think the history of Europe from 1848 until World War II. Just a coup every 10 minutes. And it's a patent absurdity on the face of it to hate people because they live around the corner and speak another vernacular in the next house, so to speak.
Thanks, Steven. Eat your fucking bread.
Yeah. I think that was actually Bloom talking. He's like, hey, understandable. He's had to deal with 2 anti-Semitisms in one day.
Oh, it is that. You're right. That is Bloom speaking.
Yeah. He's like, maybe we shouldn't hate people who just speak a different language than us, like those funny Italians who are doing poetry when yelling at the ice cream guy.
Putana Madonna.
He doesn't hate them. He thinks it's a beautiful language.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful
Why can't
language.
we be
That's
like
why-
the Italians? The Italians all get along. As the fucking
It's
fist
so
fight
funny
still
because
goes
they
in the
don't. Italy didn't exist as a country until
Very
years
recently.
before this book was written, and and their prime minister I think resigned last week, after leading the country for less than a year and a half. They have an incredibly unstable government. It's awesome.
Yeah, Italy is one of those countries that feels like they should have been around forever,
No.
but really didn't really happen until after
Italy-
World War II.
Italy's existence as a country is literally modern.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean,
It was
Italy
a kingdom, some papal states, some city-states, and republics, all just sort of mixed around.
Yeah, they didn't
constantly
become
stabbing each other.
they didn't become a democracy until after World War II.
Yep. Even then, it wasn't a real democracy because by the CIA, and the other half is funded by the KGB.
Yeah.
And they were shooting at each other constantly.
They went from monarchy to fascist regime to republic.
To CIA puppet state.
Yeah. To fight the commies.
They only became a modern country in the 90s. That's when everything about Operation Gladio came out, and they found out that the largest political party was entirely funded by the CIA, and that's not a joke. Yeah, most of the time conspiracy theories are not true. Italy post-war to about the late 80s, every conspiracy is happening simultaneously. Yeah, there was a fake like kidnap, like there was a fake radical leftist group that was actually a right-wing group that kidnapped the prime minister to advocate for communism, even though they were actually a fascist group funded by the CIA. And like it was great stuff.
So it's like a double false flag?
Yes. The CIA was doing double false flags in Italy.
That's wild.
On top of distract from the regular false flags and just and
didn't the CIA also blow up a passenger airliner?
Allegedly, one of the people they were paying did that as a terrorism.
As an
allegedly.
epic prank to own the libs.
Yes.
I mean, there was that time when we shot one down because it looked funny on the radar screen.
Radar screens are hard, okay? Everything looks funny on a radar screen.
I love that we shot down an Iranian airliner, refused to apologize, and then gave all the soldiers on that boat medals for shooting down a civilian.
Very cool.
That's cool. Yeah. The airline thing. The thing is, that's the official theory, which means now I no longer believe it, and do think that the Italian Air Force accidentally shot down their own airliner, thinking it was Gaddafi's plane heading from Libya to France.
I mean, we do have precedent, obviously, for people with advanced radar systems thinking that an airliner looks like an incoming jet fighter.
Yeah, or a UFO.
I blame aliens on that one. I don't think it ever blew up. I think it landed successfully, and they just didn't want us to know.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, that's good. I like that.
Everyone on board went into witness protection.
Italian witness protection.
Protection. Yeah.
So all the men either grew or shaved a mustache.
Yeah. They switched their palette from red to green. That's a Mario joke for you.
For you gamers
out there.
Yeah. They swap controllers. Yeah. All right, where were we? Skinner's Alley. The whole world is full of that sort of thing. And they're sort of like, I guess, debating the nature of things. And like why people fight and why societies hate each other. Is like, maybe it's some inherent nature of mankind. We're just competitive. Maybe it's a gland. Maybe we're bound by honor and flags. Maybe it's money. And one guy.
It's the gland.
It's the gland.
And some people just don't know when to stop. And then another one's like, it's people always say it's the Jews who are accused of ruining things, and it's not true. And he's like, whenever they kicked out the Jews, bad things happened. Like the Spanish Empire began to decline after they kicked out the Jews, and that when the Cromwell dictatorship, in the old timey word, because it's still old times, were like, let the Jews in. They're like, things did well. And then the Ottoman Empire went into decline after they kicked out Jews. And now look, America hasn't kicked out the Jews, and they're becoming a rising power in the world.
It's true. It's all the Jews.
And I'm like,
we need them for our space lasers.
Yeah, we built the space laser, so we had to do what we want. And I mean, not to like, and I mean, Bloom's point is technically correct, but like, I don't think it's a 1-to-1, or there's just some correlations here. It's just usually empires hit the peak of their imperial phase and then just decide to expel Jews. It's one of those things you do.
Yeah. You gotta get the achievement.
Foreign policy becomes domestic.
Like in like the building phase of America, if we had Jews to expel, we would have expelled them. Instead, we just decided to do the cool move and just not let them leave Europe or Nazi Germany. We turned the boat back and said, no, take them back to Nuremberg and Auschwitz. We don't want them here, which is cool. They don't tell you that in history class, that we turned all the Jews back and then they died.
We only turned most of the Jews back. We kept a few of them.
Yeah, the ones who would let us build the ones who could help us build nuclear weapons, we kept. With the rest, Are they really people if they can't help you build guns?
Well, it was the poor Jews that we sent back.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I wasn't aware there was anything to do in life other than build nuclear weapons.
Paper clips.
Oh yeah, you could make paper clips.
Nuclear paper clips. Yeah, if you bend it, fission occurs, and you take out the whole office. You know, and then Bloom sort of ends this little thing about that that friendly intercourse between man and man is true patriotism.
Wait.
And that's sort of,
Yeah. Hell yeah.
I assume in like a brotherhood of man sort of sense,
No.
I mean,
In a
no,
literal sense.
if you want,
Gay sex is true patriotism.
Friendly intercourse between man and man. That's patriotism.
yeah,
There's nothing more patriotic than fucking your bros.
yeah, being a true American is when you kiss your homies goodnight, square on the lips.
Yes.
Mhm.
America, the moral fabric of America has
America
degraded
first.
because we don't kiss the homies goodnight anymore.
Many are saying this.
Who is saying that?
We are.
Yeah,
Well,
literally
we
us
are
is
many.
saying this.
Me and my 200 sock puppet accounts. And so after this grand statement, Steven finally starts drinking more of his coffee.
Thank God.
And that his eyes aren't working. And that he's like, you know what, I'm done.
He
I
could
guess.
hear, of course, all kinds of words changing color, like those crabs about Ringsend in the morning, burrowing quickly into all colors of different sorts of the same sand where they had a home somewhere beneath or seemed to. What?
Yeah, man.
It's
Color changing crabs?
the words change color, like crabs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the color changing crabs are real.
Is this meant to be like
Are
a,
they?
Well, they're not. Okay, they don't like change color and like they change color. But like, they're these types of crabs are like have semi-translucent shells, and when the light glints off them in the morning,
Gotcha.
I'm going off the annotations here. Just
This honestly-
their color changes depending on the light.
This analogy sounds more like he's saying like the words change color exactly the same way that crabs don't.
That would make more sense, I guess. Yeah.
And he's just like, so he's faded, and he's trying to get this terrible coffee down, and like he's been trying to do for like the past, well, now 52 pages. And so like when he says "count me out," the eyes were surprised at this observation because as the person who owned them pro tem observed, or rather his voice speaking did, almost work have to together. So like, wait, the intellectual is like, nah, okay, I'm done. I'm tapping out of this
Yeah, because he's
conversation.
fucked as hell.
Yeah. The thing is, he's not actually out because he keeps talking later.
Yeah,
And
of course.
they keep going about, you know, how this is important work to do. You gotta have your philosophies and you gotta live by your pens. And you know the nature of where you belong. You know, the true nature of Ireland. And Stephen, who's patently cross-tempered after all this questioning from the other lads, repeated and shoved aside his mug of coffee, or whatever you like to call it, none too politely adding, 1170. What could he mean by this? It's maybe this is a tie-in with the 1140 legal wife.
What? Wait,
I'm
what?
not sure if that's a printing error. And like
This
some
is
text,
mean.
Hold
some, like,
on.
text got turned into hex code, and the hex code got printed as a number.
Let me,
Some
Sure, and
And so
NBSP.
speaking, he said
Wonder if
1170.
1170. 1170? What is it? This man's speaking in code now. And since we can't change the country, let's change the subject because he got tired of
Egyptian
politics.
army
And
invades
so speaking,
Palestine.
he said 177013.
On 117.
All right, I have an alternate printing here
the
that
city of- the
does
city of
not
Dublin
have
was
that
seized
number
by
in it.
Anglo-Norman forces.
In
Forcing
the
king
year
of Dublin into exile.
1170.
Is he just saying a year of an invasion?
The
Okay.
year that the king of Dublin was sent into exile.
Oh.
Okay,
After
but I found a
combined
different printing and it
Anglo-Norman and
doesn't
Irish
have an
forces
1170 in it.
What does it say instead there?
Nothing. It just has a line break.
Okay, so
Oh.
I'm gonna assume the 1170 is correct then, and then saying the year when the last king of Dublin was banished from the realm.
No! No!
Yes.
It's a he
I
is
think it's a
saying
good
this next
explanation.
line we can't change the country.
Let us change the subject. Which is good because we can't. You cannot change the nature of the English. They will stiff upper lip and keep calm and carry on themselves, right, and walk backwards into hell the entire time.
God
Yeah,
bless
man,
the
keep
English.
it. Brexit will go great for you. Just if your lips are stiff enough, you can just rebuild an entire international relationship.
No deal. No deal. No deal.
I mean, like,
What's the current? Has anyone checked up on Brexit?
I think there's still too
Not
bit.
really.
Look, the only news that comes out of England these days is just more turf shit, and it's just so exhausting.
Yeah, I think they've got some sort of wacky agreement, but like now various border towns smell like piss because all the truckers have to sit there for 12 hours a day waiting to get through customs.
Yeah, it's
Returning to
fine.
the English ancient roots.
Yeah, yeah,
And also they keep constantly producing turf shit.
yeah.
It's their only national export these days.
Yeah, pretty much.
Incredible stuff. And then Mr. Bloom. And so, needless to say, the fumes of his recent orgy spoke then with some asperity in a curious, bitter way foreign to his sober state. Probably the home life which Mr. B attached to the utmost had not been all that was needful, or he had been familiarized with the right sort of people. With a touch of fear for the young man beside him, whom he furtively scrutinized with an air of some consternation, remembering he had just come back from Paris, the eyes more especially reminding him forcibly of father and sister. Failing to throw much light on the subject, however, he brought to mind instances of cultured fellows that promise so brilliantly nipped in the bud of premature decay and nobody to blame but themselves. For instance, there was the case of O'Callahan, for one, the half-crazy fadist,
Baddest?
respectably connected through inadequate means, mad vagaries. among
Yeah,
whose
a
other
faddist is just someone who
Person who
follows
subscribes
fads.
to fads.
Yeah.
Okay. Among others, gay doings when Rotto and making himself a nuisance to everybody all around, he was in the habit of ostensibly sporting in public a suit of brown paper. A fact.
A fact.
And then the usual denouement. After the fun had gone on fast and furious, he got 1190, landed into hot water, and had to be spirited away by a few friends.
I'm gonna assume that's another printing error here.
Yeah.
I do like, or like it's the police
Thanks,
code,
coding error.
like a 420. He got 1190.
We got an 1190 in progress.
You got section 13 or something.
This guy's walking
Um,
around in brown papers.
Bizarre. The thing is, I'm not sure how this connects to anything. Because like Mr. Bloom looks over at Steven, and then he realizes, oh god, I still smell of fucking. He's like, then maybe, and the narrator's like, maybe it's because he wasn't socialized right, or that his wife is cheating on him, that he's doing this, and it just starts going on and on. We got estates, we got lords, we got upper 10 other high personages, and he's, maybe rich people just sort of do whatever the people who are more rich than them do all the way
Wait,
to
so
the top.
hold on. Let's rewind a smidge here to the fumes of the recent orgy.
Yes.
Does that mean Bloom actually fucked?
He might have stood in the corner and watched.
More likely, yeah.
Okay.
I, from what I recall of Chapter 15 and of the events that occurred within, nowhere does it directly imply that he had sex with the prostitutes in that room. He had sex with fantasy creatures, or almost had sex with fantasy creatures. He got fisted in his
Did get
vulva.
fisted in his vulva.
He gave birth to silver and gold babies.
Yes.
He was wreathed with things. He had stuff thrown on him. He became the king of the new Blumusulum. And then he
Rest
got
in peace,
immediately
Blumuth
deposed.
Slumum.
Yeah. And then he almost got in a fight, and then the King of England appeared and choked the guy out until he came so hard the rope shot through the pants. And the other women started looking that up from the street.
Yes, he busted a big fat nut through his pants. Not Bloom, that random
Not
Irish Republican that they just grabbed off the street.
So I nowhere does it say, and then Bloom fucked the whole. So he might have in all of that psychosexual disaster space, but he might not have. And
Who knows? Who can
who
say?
knows? See you in 25 years. Yeah. God. Let's see what else. Yeah, he's thinking some Bloom thoughts. Some thinking about women.
Thinking about Wham.
Yeah, man. The ladies who like distinctive underclothing should, and well-tailored man must, trying to make the gap wider between them by innuendo and give more of a genuine flip to acts of impropriety between the two. She unbuttoned his and then untied her, mind the pin. Whereas savages in the Cannibal Islands say up to 90 degrees in the shade, not carrying a continental. And he's like,
Yes, I see. I understand.
yeah, yeah. Like in order to have sex here in this terrible place we all live in, you have to get through all like their 75 layers of clothing. Whereas in the tropical climates, they're not wearing anything at all, so they can just get right to the fucking.
So he's saying that the English are undersexed because they wear
Yeah.
too many layers?
Yes. They can't get a man of the people. No, not interested in foreplay at all. Just get right goddamn to it.
Close your eyes and think of England.
Yeah, after like 20 minutes of undressing.
Yeah. That's the foreplay. That's all the foreplay you need.
Yeah. Sheer
How
force
about
of
fucking
natural,
striptease?
sheer force of natural genius. That with brains, sir. He's still waiting on Steven, who's just, I presumably just physically just head on the counter at the top, just groaning and making sad sounds. And I think. Let's see. So Bloom is conveniently summing some of the previous events of the chapter up for a bit, but the whole galaxy of events and sort of people who come to these places and disappear in the night. And was sort of joking about and writing a column about this experience in a cab.
In a cab. My experiences in a cabman shelter. We should write that. Someone should write that. Except his experiences in a cabman shelter this is probably like the only time he's ever been to a cabman shelter.
He doesn't seem the sort of guy who would end up at.
Yeah, because he's a boring
House at 2 in the
teetotaler who
morning.
doesn't go out.
Yeah.
Like, why the hell would he be at sketchy coffee shops on the regular?
It's an outsider's perspective.
There you go.
Oh, it's like when the national news parachutes into a local. Cool.
It's like when they get the guy the guy from Vice to talk
yeah.
about like the furries or something.
Haven't the furries produced their own internal document?
Many. Yeah.
Okay. Which is worrying. Not from like because it's furry, but from a documentarian standpoint. You get it's always worrying when like the subject produces the documentary that they are a subject of, because you get some ethical concerns. And some integrity concerns.
Are you gonna call the furries out for their ethics in journalism?
It's part of this.
It's about ethics in furry journals.
It's about ethics in furry journalism.
Well, this is a constant tension now with as it's been as the internet has made it like anyone can become a documentarian by pointing a camera at themselves.
I think we struck a nerve here with this topic.
I don't think that anyone watches self-made furry documentaries and expects it to be a bastion of independent and honest journalism. It's just people recording themselves at cons.
Well, no, I think they've made actual like documentary.
Yeah. At the same
and
time,
so-
all right, hold on. So,
And this does raise a concern because the fucking pillow guy made his so-called documentary where he's just him sitting behind a desk for 2 hours.
Which pillow guy? There's two pillow
My
guys
guy.
now.
Lindell.
Okay.
The Trump pillow guy.
Yep, Trump's pillow guy, not Biden's pillow guy.
No, or like wild shit like Dinesh D'Souza's documentaries where like it's just a bunch of conservatives paying another conservative to point the camera at them and spew conservative talking points. And
But
it's
at,
like, hey,
at the
wait a
same
minute.
time,
Or
how
he presents himself in his own documentaries as an expert, and it's like, hey, wait a minute, what happened to integrity?
But
I
how
mean,
can
it's-
someone make a documentary about a subculture that isn't part of the subculture, right? Like, you have to, like, you don't necessarily have to be part of it, but you have to be deeply
Involved in
familiar
some
with
way.
it and the history. And you have
You
to
can do that
be,
through
like,
research.
embedded among it to see.
If you're doing that style, if you're doing like cinema verite, and you're fly on the wall style stuff. But like that, there's a difference between. But like the perspective is still an outsider's perspective. It's not an internal thing. Where there's that you need that critical distance between subject and documentarian, so that you can have criticality. Because otherwise, you're gonna get somebody sort of glosses all over the unsavory bits. And this is more of a concern in like the fake political documentaries and like furries, because I mean,
There's
I mean,
there's
the
no
seedy underbelly
unsavory.
of the
There's
furries-
no seedy underbelly to gloss over. Furries have done nothing wrong ever.
No, it's not an underbelly. It's just right on the surface, all over the walls. In fact,
They're not hiding
I am-
anything.
no, they don't hide it. They literally smear it on the walls. I am referring to actual events at CERN FurCon.
That was one. Okay, that was
was
one
like-
guy who was fired from the company, from the organization that runs it, who was literally just smearing shit on people's cars to get them kicked out of the venue because he was mad that he got fired. That was one guy. It was not a
God.
recurring thing. Well, it was in the sense that he did it for like 3 days straight, but
yeah. I mean, come on, man. Like, do the normal thing if you get fired and you want to go joke them over, which is you just light shit on. That's what the guy who's fired from Chicago Tracon did. Shut down that whole chunk of airspace. But we got to get back to the book. Fortunately, we can skim through a lot of this chunk because this is just him and by Bloom looking at a man who's looking at a newspaper, which is the most riveting
Cool.
type of content known to man, and just sort of recapping the events of the novel, like Patty Digham's funeral, the people who attended, the essay that Daedalus' boss put in the paper about the foot and mouth disease. Bless you.
I'm okay.
That's a very cute sneeze. I must say.
Thanks. All
Uh,
VTubers need cute sneezes.
You're going. That's how you bring in the super chats.
Yeah, I don't know why. That one came out like a full octave above my normal sneezes. Something about
no,
being a
he's
VTuber.
he's turning into a femboy. We're
Ooh,
gonna-
baby, that's what I've been waiting for.
Bloom, I suppose Bloom is a femboy in the sense that he has a vulva.
Or at least did for a little while.
We're
Briefly.
We're gonna rewriting Kafka's The Metamorphosis, but instead of waking up to find that he's a giant insect, he turned into a femboy. And he can't take the thigh-high socks off, no matter how hard he tries.
I see.
I see. I'm doing bits here. This is
Pretty
this
sure I read a Dojin like that once.
Forced feminization.
You can tell I'm doing jokes because I don't change my voice from speaking voice.
Yeah, it's the deadpan delivery that really sells it.
Yeah. Oi. Yeah. It's good. Apparently the newspaper spelled his name wrong, so he's no longer Bloom, he's Boom.
Leopold Boom.
Leopold Boom. There's some talks about on the horse race, which I referred to when Daedalus and his friend went to see a horse race.
What page are you on now?
I'm on 59.
Man, you
How many
would have
more
skipped ahead a
pages do you
bunch
have to
there.
go?
I don't know. How long do we want to go tonight? How long's the
We're-
chapter?
no,
The chapter goes to
90
like.
something.
We're not gonna finish that tonight.
Yeah, no.
No.
So we can call it now because we've just done a sum up of what's happened in the book so far.
We have, yeah.
Of the events that happened in the first half of the book, in case anyone came in late and wanted to
Oh
catch
god,
up.
it's a list of names.
Yeah, it's what it's yeah, it's horse stuff. horse racing, and they talked about, oh yeah, you know, if the horse would win.
The horse would win.
Yeah, that horse would win.
It's-
I pointed at the screen. I pointed at the screen, and be like, yeah, that's the horse that would win.
well, I'm sorry, I missed
That
it.
doesn't work as a visual gag.
No.
Yeah.
It's even funnier just saying the horse would win.
You hear about the horse race? I heard the horse
I
will
mean,
win.
That's a safe bet.
Just said, yeah, the odds are 1-to-1 that a horse will win the horse race.
Wait, doesn't
would be
1-to-1 means 50-50?
Yeah.
oh,
You want like
1 to 0?
a million to 1.
0-0? Then it's going to happen.
No, it's not 0 to 0. Do you know how odds work?
No,
Okay,
I don't. I don't gamble, so I
Never
don't know how to
gamble.
do odds.
it's the ratio of how much you place versus how much you win. So a 1-to-1 means for every 100 you put in, you get 100 if you win. Plus your initial bet back. So if
Why do you
it's
know so much about gambling?
I just know how fractions work. If it's
A likely
50 to
story.
if it's 50 to 1 odds, it means that for every $50 that you bet, you will earn $1. If it's 1 to 50 odds, it means for every 1 you bet, you earn $50. Or maybe it's the other way around. I think it's the other way around.
So you're not a very good bookie, is what I'm saying. Is what I'm hearing here.
Anyway,
Horse.
1-to-1 is 50-50. It's
Look, we don't have to worry about this. Horses aren't real anyway.
this is
Sure
real.
about that?
I've never seen a horse.
I'm pretty sure I've seen a horse.
Those were fake.
The hologram.
They were pretty solid at the time. They
No,
might be
the
a
hor-
robot though.
Oh, big dog. No, yeah, no, the
No,
horses
big
are
horse.
holograms that were. That's the
Holograms that were what?
conspiracy.
Sure were.
They
All
sure
right.
were.
All right, I think that's it. Are we done?
No, I'm gonna
Any other
keep this
questions?
bad boy rolling. Let's go.
Any
Get some more
questions?
cake.